Welcome to all of our newly admitted international students. My name is Greg Weimer. I am the Director of International Students and Scholars here at Colorado State University. And I am excited that you're here. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're at in the world. We're glad that you're here. This workshop is being recorded, so you can go back and re-listen to it and get some more pointers, that kind of thing. I believe that once it's all said and done, anyone that attended the visa tips successfully navigating the visa interview process workshop will receive a link on that, and you should have the ability to go out and renew or review this information. But again, welcome. I'm glad that you're here. We're going to get right started. We've got 18 slides here, and then we will have time at the end to answer some questions. So in the chat box, feel free to put any of your questions. I'm not going to ask them as we go or answer them as we go along, but once we get to the end, we'll go through some of those chats and answer those as well. And that might be in the question answer. So put your questions in the question answer option. Is that correct, Bronwyn?
Yes, that's the best way for us to track them.
Fantastic. So put your questions in the question answer, and we will answer them as we can. All right. So with that, we'll get started. And so the first thing that we're going to ask you to do is really kind of begin the process. All right. So once you've been admitted, you will receive your I-20 or in some cases DS 2019 if you're a J1 student that's coming. And we'll send that to you. And as you get that I-20, you're going to need to do a couple things. One, pay the SEVIS fee online. Complete the DS-160 form, which is the application to apply for a visa at your local embassy, and then make your visa appointment at the local consulate. So as far as paying the SEVIS fee is charged to the U.S. By the U.S. government. A lot of students think, why is Colorado State making me pay this additional fee? We do not make you pay that. The U.S. government does. Anyone who has a I-20 or a DS 2019 actually has to pay a charge, and that is $350 for new F1 students. I believe it's $200 or $220 for J1 visas. Your SEVIS ID number is listed on your I-20, and you'll use that ID number to pay the fee. So make sure that you write your name exactly as appears on your I-20. If your name on your I-20 doesn't match your passport, you need to contact the International Admissions Office immediately before paying the SEVIS fee and applying for your visa. And then you want to print out this receipt to keep your SEVIS fee receipt. It's also known as an I-901 fee. That's the SEVIS fee. You want to print out that receipt and keep that with you. And you complete the DS 2019. This is an online visa application available through the U.S. Embassy. So consult your local consulate's website. You should also pay the visa application fee if you're required to in advance of your visa appointment. You'll need to upload an approved photo as part of the application. So once you've completed the DS 160 confirmation page, you want to print that out once you've completed the application. And then make sure you visit your visa appointment. Then make your visa appointment at your local embassy or consulate. And we always get questions from students. What happens if there's no openings or there's no ability to schedule an appointment because it's so busy? In the spring, if you're coming in the spring, typically you're not going to find that to be the case. But if you're coming in the fall, in August of a school year, then a lot of times those visa appointments are hard to get. You want to keep checking the embassy website every day to make sure that someone hasn't canceled their appointment and you can slide into that canceled appointment. So keep checking is the best advice that we have for you. All right, so what to expect during the visa interview? So first of all, interviews are not conducted in English. And a lot of times and not always the case, sometimes you're coming from a country where English is your first language. But if you're coming from a country where English is your second language, this tends to be a pretty nerve-wracking or an experience that makes applicants extremely nervous about this part of the visa application process. However, what we're going to suggest is if you remain calm, answer questions honestly, and bring all required documents, the process can be very straightforward. Again, the interviews are in English. Do not bring another person to speak on your behalf or request that the interview be conducted in any language other than English. As a J1 student and F1 student that's been admitted to a US institution, you are expected to know and be fluent in English. The interview visa record, so they don't, first of all, jumping back to the screen here, the visa interviews, they don't last very long. So usually about between 2 and 3 minutes is what you can anticipate. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Digital fingerprint scans are usually taken during the visa interview process. That's normal. Keep in mind that the visa interview record is for life or until you become a US citizen. So if you are ever asked by a consulate officer, have you ever been denied a visa before, or have you ever applied for a visa before? Make sure that you answer truthfully, because the consulate officer actually already knows that record is synced, and they're able to kind of, based on your passport numbers and that kind of thing, look at previous visa interviews. The visa consulate official makes the ultimate decision as to whether you'll be granted a student visa, and he or she will exercise a lot of discretion in the process. So keep that in mind. All right, what documents to bring to the interview? So bring your I-20 form or your DS 2019 if you are a J1 student, and remember to sign them. So we're going to send those out electronically. You need to print it off, and then you need to sign the I-20 or the DS 2019. You need to bring your passport. You need to bring your visa application or confirmation page and the fee receipt if you've been required to pay it in advance. So print those off once you've completed your visa application online. Colorado State University admission letter, TOEFL or IELTS score reports, GRE if you're a graduate student and you've done the GRE, any sort of educational documents like that. Documents to show that you've been a great student. Transcripts, that kind of thing. Financial support documents, even though you had to provide those to us, bring a copy in case they have any questions. And then any other documents to show strong ties to your home country. Property in your name or parents' information, income tax documents will always be helpful at times. Now, again, with these other documents, it's okay to take these additional documents. Just know that you'll probably not be asked for them unless it comes up in the interview. Visa interview documents are different from country to country, so please check with your local consulate office to find or to make sure what documents you need to take. We're giving you a list or an example of what to bring. While documents are important, keep in mind the most important part of obtaining your visa is the interview process with the consulate officer. So your documents can look great. However, if the visa officer has any concerns during the visa interview based on your verbal responses, this will outweigh any positives that are presented with your documents. So we tell students the interview is a high stakes kind of situation, and the verbal interview can make or break your ability to receive the visa. Okay. In other screens, we'll talk about it being the process being a little bit more subjective than objective, that sort of thing. But on the next screen, so what we want to tell you is that how you present yourself is crucial. So one, don't memorize your answers. They don't want to feel like when they're asking you questions that you're just repeating a memorized answer. I'm giving you a presentation right now, and I'm trying to be conversational, that kind of thing, have a conversation with you. It's important that the visa consulate officer perceives you to be genuine. Okay, and so when you memorize answers, they tend to think, okay, I'm not getting like a genuine response from this individual, and that might be a red flag for them. So it's important that it doesn't seem like you have a speech memorized for each answer, that sort of thing, each question that they ask. Be calm. Number two, be calm. If the applicant is extremely nervous, it makes the visa consulate officer wonder if you're being truthful. So we can't say it enough. Take a deep breath. Before you approach the window and you start talking with the consulate officer, take a deep breath. Try to calm yourself. I know easy for me to say, right? Because I'm not going through the process, but it's normal to be nervous, but if you can be calm as you present yourself, it's going to help. Be respectful. Number three, say yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am when they ask questions. If the conversation ends up being challenging or tenuous or kind of a little bit of tension, that's not going to help you very well. So just be respectful. Secondly, like we mentioned before, answer truthfully. And I don't suggest this because I think that international students are not truthful. It's actually opposite. After 25 years of working with international students and becoming friends with them and that kind of thing, you're all extremely honest people. But as mentioned before, if you're caught in a lie, it's an immediate grounds for denial, and later attempts will be impacted negatively as well because, again, your visa interview or your consulate record, your visa interview record is for life. Be confident, not overconfident, but confident. You've been admitted to a solid nationally ranked university. You're qualified to be here. And so you've got great grades. You've submitted financial documents that show that you can cover your expenses. So be confident from that standpoint. That should help with the nervousness and help you to be calm. And then finally, be familiar with the institution, with the university. Fort Collins community, know a little bit about Fort Collins, the city of Fort Collins, the state of Colorado, learn about CSU, read and learn about your programs and courses. Your department has a website and you can go out and kind of read a little bit of background on that. Maybe know the names of a few professors. And again, a little bit about Colorado, Fort Collins, what the weather's like, where Colorado is located in the US. Just a little bit from that standpoint will help go a long way. All right, so the next section, we want to actually provide you with a little bit of insight from a former U.S. consular officer. And so a former colleague of mine, we attended a session, and this individual was a former U.S. consulate, and they gave a lot of awesome guidance on what students can expect. So we've incorporated that into our presentation. So first of all, there's sometimes some cultural misunderstandings that consulate officers might have. Sometimes visa officers are new in their positions and they don't always understand the culture of the students applying. And this particular consulate officer gave an example of a newly married Chinese couple that was applying for a visitor visa and wanted to bring their grandparents on the honeymoon to visit the United States. And the consular officer denied them because they're like, in our culture, who's going to bring their grandparents on their honeymoon? It's just not done. Honeymoon is for just the couple, so to speak. So she started to see this trend. And so she talked with another visa consulate officer and she goes, what in the world? All these Chinese young couples are trying to bring their grandparents on their honeymoon. I've been denying all of these. And they're like, oh, well, no, you probably shouldn't. You know, in their culture, Chinese couples, when they get married, in order to honor their grandparents because of all of the support that they've provided, a lot of times will offer to pay for their grandparents to come on the honeymoon with them. And from that point on, she started making different decisions. And so just keep in mind that there may at times be cultural misunderstandings that the consulate officer has that you're speaking with. Limited language abilities of the ambassador. So again, this is why we ask you not to ask or try to speak to them in English, because they go through intensive language training, but that may not be enough for them to fully understand all of the aspects of the local language. They may not, it takes many, 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 many years to become fluent in a foreign language. And so that's why we tell you just speak to them in English. That will actually avoid any miscommunications from a language standpoint. And then consular officers are many times overworked with limited information. So most interviews will last no longer, like I mentioned, than 3 minutes. Consular officers need to get through 20 applicants per hour or 20 interviews per hour. So that's every 3 minutes. They're kind of zipping through these interviews. So you can anticipate that it's going to be an extremely quick process. Okay. So in terms of decisions that a consular officer makes, they are final. Okay. And when it's made, it cannot be overturned even by the consular officer's supervisor. There's what's known as the doctrine of consular non-reviewability. So if you're denied, students can apply again However, the chances of another denial become incrementally higher. And the reason for that is because there's notes in the system based off of the interview of the previous interview. And so if nothing's changed from the first denial to the second interview, then there is a higher likelihood that you will continue to be denied. So refusals are difficult to overcome. A fresh look at an applicant is true in theory, but again, case notes of previous refusals will be reviewed prior to or during the interview. Consular officers can take a look back on notes from previous visa appointments. One thing that you need to understand is visa rejection rates are between 35 and 60% for student applicants. So hopefully you're not one of those 30 to 60% that are rejected, 35 to 60%, but that's a pretty high rate in terms of, and it depends on countries a lot of times. Some countries it's easier to get a visa than other countries. Some of that's tied to government relations and those sort of things between governments. And so just be aware of that. It's 60%. That's a high probability that you'll be denied. Don't worry about that. It doesn't help to worry, but just know that if you are denied, you're amongst the 35 to 60% of the visa interviewees that were actually denied. And then try to get a reason you were denied in writing, but do not engage the consular officer in an argument. So never hurts to ask, hey, can you give me a reason why I was denied? And typically they're going to give you a form, and we're going to talk about what that form says. And it's just a blanketed rejection. But sometimes you can ask the visa officer, was there a specific reason why I was denied? And sometimes they'll say, nope, you can apply again, try to apply again. Or sometimes they'll say, well, I think I need to see a little bit stronger financial portfolio from you in terms of your family, that kind of thing. So it doesn't hurt to ask. They may tell you, no, I can't give you a reason, and they'll give you that form and you move on. Don't argue with them. But if you ask them, they may say, they might be having a great day, and they may say, sure, here's kind of why I made the decision that I made. So it never hurts to ask that, but just don't engage them in an argument. All right, so this is what I was talking about, INA 214B, and it covers everything. It's an extremely broad statute, and the consular officer can refuse for anything. And consular officers are considered to be human lie detectors by the State Department. So if they feel something's off, they can just use this huge statute of 214B and not give any reason for the denials. So this is why it's extremely important to be honest, genuine, and really just represent yourself as who you are. As I mentioned before, they have notes from previous interviews, so anything that does not match, they will actually deny. I do have a story of a former U.S. consulate officer that was a consulate officer in Mexico, and they actually used to deny students at times based on the color of their socks. And you think, what in the world? Why is that? How are they making decisions based on the color of their socks? This is just an example of something that transpired. But around the Mexican embassy, around the corner, there was actually a suit rental place. And so what they came to find out is that if a student had white socks, that means that they rented the suit. And more than likely, they didn't really have a solid financial background because they didn't own a suit themselves. Whereas if they had black socks, then they thought, okay, this is actually the student's own suit and tie and that kind of thing. And so they were more likely to approve that visa. I would love to tell you that the visa application process is an objective process. It is not. It is extremely subjective, and it's all based on the consulate officer's decision and really what they're feeling and kind of whether they see red flags. I hate to say this, but if you have a consulate officer that is drinking coffee that morning and they accidentally dumped coffee on their shirt, I hate to say it, many of the actual visa applicants are not getting visas that day. Okay, they're having a bad day. You could have a visa officer that's having a great day, and a majority of the the student applicants or the visa applicants actually get visas that day. So it's extremely subjective. I hope you meet a consulate officer on a good day. But again, just know that it's not necessarily anything you've done, but rather the subjectivity of the visa consulate officer. So I know that's not great news, but want to be straightforward with you from that standpoint. So sometimes your visa application is put on hold in its administrative processing. So they have not denied your visa, but they need to do further research. And so it's called administrative processing, and the statute is 221G, and it covers anything. It could be a number of things, including background check because there was a red flag raised during the interview process. It could be documentary things that need to be resolved, maybe a program start date on the I-20. Maybe you're applying 2 days before the school semester starts, and they're like, well, we're leaning towards issuing you a visa, but we need a new updated I-20 from your school that allows you to arrive later than the program start date. Or it could be the program of study needs to be reviewed, especially for those programs that are on our list for national safety. Some of those are nuclear science, flight school, things like that. After 9/11, they started to actually put some of our programs on a national safety list. So that could be a potential possibility as well. So 212, if you get administrative processing, that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's actually better than being denied. So if you get a form that says 221G, it doesn't mean that you're denied, just means that they need to do more research or take more time to review, or something needs to be corrected. So keep that in mind. That is a possibility. So final consular officer thoughts. If the visa application process is taking a very long time and you think that you'll be late for the start of the semester, please contact the International Student Services Office as early as possible, and we can assist you with the next steps. A couple thoughts from the visa consular officer. Once you receive your visa and you enter the United States, don't get into trouble, because that can actually impact future visa renewals, that sort of thing. It goes without saying, but one thing that students tend to get in trouble with here in the United States is either with alcohol or marijuana. Okay, we have a drinking age in the United States of 21. So if you're under the age of 21 and you actually get a minor in possession, or maybe you drink too much and you get pulled over for a DUI, we've had students visas revoked based on driving under the influence. In the state of Colorado, medical or marijuana is legal. However, at the federal level, it's not. So even if you live in the state of Colorado, you as an international student cannot partake in using marijuana. That is actually against federal regulations, and that can be an automatic reason for a revocation or revocation of your visa. Once arrested, fingerprints go into the FBI system and eventually will make their way to the State Department. Will likely have a negative impact on visa interviews, especially if their arrest is in the last 5 years. And this will negatively impact your visa renewal. I've had over the years a couple students who have engaged in marijuana or partaken in marijuana, and they had their visas revoked. They didn't let us know that they had this charge on the against them, and when they went home, when they tried to renew their visa, they were denied and they could not return. So if that ever happens, come talk to us before you travel, because we will actually tell you if your visa's expired and you have any sort of criminal record, that kind of thing. Don't travel back until after you've completed your degree, because more than likely you will not be able to renew your visa. So those are other thoughts, final thoughts from the consulate officer. So visas for family members. So family members can come with you to the United States while you study at Colorado State University. These family members are called your dependents and can apply for an F2 visa. For a dependent F2 visa purpose, dependents are your legal spouse or your unmarried children under the age of 21. So If you're hoping to bring family members with you as you study here in the United States, please contact the International Admissions Office and they'll provide you with the appropriate I-20 paperwork for you and your dependents so that you can then help them apply for an F2 visa. Some families or some students wait until they get here and then they request that. That's completely fine. And then we can send F2 I-20s, dependent I-20s back, and then they can apply for a visa as well. If other family members are coming with you to CSU, they will need to apply for a B1, B2 visitor visa. And so sometimes families, and this happened even just this last fall, where we had 4 or 5 sets of parents that came with their students because they wanted to see Colorado State. They wanted to meet the staff that was going to be taking care of their son or daughters or helping them out. And so they traveled with their daughter or their sons to really kind of see what orientation was like and that kind of thing. And that is completely fine. So they can apply for a tourist visa. We also have students when they graduate, we have a special stole ceremony, and then of course the commencement where you go through the graduation ceremony. And so family members are encouraged to apply for a tourist visa during that time as well. All right, so I wanted to provide you with some sample interview questions. These were actually taken from the Department of State website. And so these are potentially some of the questions that you might be asked when you go to your visa interview. And we provide these for you so that you can go through these and really start to think about what your answer would be for some of these questions. Again, don't memorize your answers, but start to think about how you would respond to some of these questions. So, and I'm not going to go through each one and give you kind of an idea of how to answer it. But why did you select to study in the US? Why are you coming to the US versus studying in your own country? What institutions did you apply to? Maybe you only applied to Colorado State. Maybe you applied to several institutions within the United States. Why did you select this institution? Why did you select Colorado State University? A lot of times I'll get students that say, Greg, can you tell me why I selected Colorado State University? And I just kind of smile and I go, let me turn the question around and ask you, why did you select Colorado State University? Was it because we had this really solid program that you wanted to apply to? Was it that you got some solid scholarship funding that made it more affordable? Maybe you have a family member or a friend that currently attends here. Maybe you had a chance to engage with a faculty member and you were really impressed with the projects that they were working on. And so that's why you want to come to this institution. There's all kinds of reasons why you're going to select Colorado State, and you need to be able to genuinely answer that. Is this your first time going to the US? Tell me more about the institution you selected. Did you do TOEFL, GRE, IELTS? If so, what were the scores? What are your summer vacation plans? Will you return home for the summer? This one's always a tricky one because students go, well, if I don't say I'm returning home, they're going to think that I don't want to come home. But if I say I'm returning home, how is that going to impact it? Well, what I would say is this. One, can you afford to travel back and forth between academic school years? If the answer is no, it's completely fine to say, well, during the summer vacation, I'll end up remaining at the institution, probably trying to take a couple of courses if possible. Or I know that I can work on campus 20 hours per week, but during the summer I can work 40 hours per week on campus. So maybe I'll try to get an on-campus job. If you say, yeah, I'm returning home every summer, and they say, well, your finances show you can barely afford to attend, how are you going to be able to afford traveling back and forth? That may give them a reason to deny your visa because it's just not matching up. And maybe you have financial documents show that you have your parents provided a bank statement that shows they have $300,000 or the equivalent of $300,000 in a bank account. And you say, well, I'll probably come home and visit family and that kind of thing. And they look at your financial documents and go, yeah, this student can afford that. So that sounds like a reasonable answer. So again, just answer truthfully or genuinely what your perception is, and don't worry about if it's right or wrong, but rather if your summer vacation plans are just to remain in the US and maybe you get a part-time job on campus, just tell them that. That's completely fine. They might ask who's paying for your education, what does your sponsor do for a living, where does your sponsor work? They might ask currently, what do you do? Maybe you're an older student that's now coming back for a master's program. And so what have you been doing as employment for the last couple of years? They might ask that. Here's a few more samples. If you're currently working, why are you leaving your current job? If you're helping your father's business or family business, what will your father and family do for the 4 years while you're gone? Who do you have in the US? Do you have any friends or family? A lot of times students don't know how to answer this. They figure if I say I have friends and family in the US, they're going to deny me because I'm an immigration risk. But they may already know that you have friends or family in the United States because that's been revealed, or they've seen that you've traveled with your family on a visitor visa to the US before, things like that. And so it's okay to have friends here in the US. It's okay to have a brother or sister or an aunt or an uncle that are here in the US. That actually might be seen as a positive because then you have a support system when you get here. So basically answer appropriately. Do you have any, who do you have in the US? Do you have any friends or family? Tell them. That's completely fine. How many brothers and sisters do you have? What's your field of study? Why did you select this field of study? Why do you think you need to go to the US to do this field? There are many courses and programs in your country. Why do you need to go to the US? Give them their opinion, why you find it important to come to the US to study. What are you planning to do after graduation? Are you planning to work during your 4-year period? What will you do if your visa is rejected? So these are all questions that could be asked. And sometimes, what are you planning to do after graduation? Are you planning to work during your 4-year period? What will you do if your visa is rejected? They're just kind of trying to get a feel for who you are as a person. If your visa is rejected, have you applied to other countries? Maybe you can say, well, if my visa is rejected, I'll apply again, because I really want to come to the US. Or or maybe you've applied to universities across various countries and say, well, if I don't get a visa here, this is my first choice, but I do have a plan B or a plan C. I've been admitted to universities in Canada, in England, in Australia, in wherever. And so I may choose to go there. The United States is a great place to study, but it's subjective on whether it's the best place to study. And so you may, if you're rejected, go to another option. And so keep that in mind. And it's okay to say that you're going to apply again as well. So let's say you make it through and you get your visa. Okay, if you get your visa, keep in mind that you're not quite done. So immigration officers can still refuse entry at the border if they have reason to question the legitimacy of a student's travel documents, or if the traveler cannot adequately answer questions about the purpose of travel. So even though students have successfully received their visa, U.S. and Customs and Border Protection processes all individuals pursuant to immigration law and reviews of available evidence at the time of the application for admission to make determination of admissibility at the port of entry. So CBP has stated in all cases the burden of proof rests with the applicant to demonstrate his or her admissibility. So you need to make sure you're prepared to answer questions upon entry, that these answers are consistent with you being a student in the US. Should also carry financial proof that you can afford to attend school even when you're traveling and you're entering the US in case you're asked for it. Students must be clear and be able to speak about the purpose of their trip, as well as provide requested evidence of financial support if asked. Last year, there were actually 21 students from India that were denied entry to the US even after they received their visa because they didn't appropriately answer questions at the border with the Customs and Border Patrol. Okay. I did have one student over the years that said, well, I'm coming to work. And it was kind of truthful, but he was coming to be a student, but he was going to be a graduate assistant that allowed him to afford his education. And he he said, I'm coming to work instead of I'm coming to study, and he was denied admission and sent back home. And he was able to kind of try to re-enter again, but not after buying another plane ticket and going to a different airport and all of that kind of stuff. So it's important that when you get to the border, don't be nervous, just answer, you're coming to be a student, that kind of thing, and make sure that your answers to their questions align with your purpose for travel, which is to be a student here in the United States. And with that, whenever we give presentations, we want to make sure that we give you information on where we received the information that we did. So travelstate.gov content student visa, that link will give you a lot of guidance. Travel.state.gov content travel, US visas, that will give you some insight. And then new visas, visa services, and operating status updates. That helps you to know kind of timelines as far as visa appointments and that sort of thing as well. So a lot of good information can be taken from these particular websites. So with that, I kind of talked through the slides, but I want to give time for questions now. And it looks like we have a few different questions, 6 open questions in our question and answer. So one, I am not a former, so this says, as we heard that you're a former visa officer, you can tell us an F1 visa interview questions most asked. So I'm not a former visa officer. I've always been in the field of international education, working with international students. So I've seen a lot of different things, but I have not been a visa officer. That being said, that list of questions, those are all common questions that you can anticipate to be asked. And we will provide a copy of this presentation, like I said, and you can go through those visa questions and start to formulate answers to those questions. So we have a student said, for my previous interview, I was asked about how I would get the funds for my education. And I told her about my sponsor, and there I was rejected. Please, what was she with me to say? Also, please, what questions should I expect for the second interview that I'm waiting for? So it's a great question. The student, I believe, is maybe from Nigeria, based off of the last name of Owusu. I think when you go, you need to be able to provide, in this case, a stronger evidence in terms of support from your sponsor, financial. They're going to ask you what's changed or what's different compared to when you interviewed a couple of weeks ago. Or a month or two ago or whenever. And so you want to have either more financial, maybe you get a second sponsor that says that they're willing to cover your expenses as well. You can have more than one sponsor. And so having a couple of sponsors with different financial statements. You can say, I'm also planning on having a part-time job when I'm on campus that's going to cover some of my personal expenses. Did you get a scholarship from Colorado State University? Do you have a graduate assistantship if you're a grad student? Maybe you'll say, well, when I'm there, I'm also going to try to get a graduate assistantship. But I also, if I don't get a graduate assistantship or I don't get additional scholarships, I do have the ability to cover my expenses through these sponsors that I've provided. So that might be the best answer. Hopefully that helps. An anonymous attendee says, you said that interviews are in English and F1s are expected to be proficient in English. What about place students? Will the consulate speak slower English for those going to an intensive program per their I-20? That's a fantastic question, and the answer is yes. They will speak slower. If they know that you're going for English language and ESL program, they are going to then maybe even attempt to speak to you at times if there's any confusion within your native language. Maybe it's Spanish, maybe it's Chinese, maybe it's Korean, what have you. And so that is completely fine. If you are coming for an English as a second language program, there is no issue with you struggling with English language or, muddling through that, because that's why you're coming, is to improve your English language skills through our I-20 and through our PLACE program. So that is completely fine. Do not be nervous about that. It is completely okay. All right, Mohammed says,
Greg, I just want to jump in quickly and remind people to post their questions in the Q&A so that we can better track them and answer them appropriately.
that would be great. So if you have submitted a question in the webinar chat, please just cut and paste it from that chat to the question and answer section of our presentation here, and we should be able to help with those. I'll try to go through the chats too, if I can, but it does help us document those. Mohammed says, should I bring all the documents I have already applied to the university? I mean, like copies of in case they're asked. The answer is yes. Anything that you provided, copy of your transcript, copy of your financial documents, copy of your TOEFL score, and copies are fine. They don't have to be the officials, that kind of thing. But copies of those to the embassy. You probably won't be asked for them. But if you are asked, then you have those to provide to them. I would also say carry those copies when you're traveling to the US after you've successfully gained your visa. So if there's any questions by Customs and Border Patrol, you have those documentations as well. So that the short answer there is yes. Another anonymous attendee says, is being the first person to be interviewed getting early in the morning, will that increase my chance of approval? Such a good question. I don't know. It depends on the day, right? If you're at the very end of the day and the consulate officer is just so tired because they've met with, figure 8 hours times 20 students or 20 applicants, visa applicants, that's 160 applicants. And if you're 160, are you going to get the visa? I don't know. It might be that they're like, okay, it's been a rough day, but wow, here's a shining star. They're applicant number 160, and they decide to show leniency because of that. That could happen. So it's really subjective. I don't think there's any harm with being the first person to be interviewed. I don't think it's going to make or break your visa interview process, but I don't know if it's going to increase your chance of approval. So we've got another question from Mohammed. Sir, how long the visa can last with you? Should I renew it every month or every year? So this is a great question. They're all great questions, so I apologize. I don't mean to imply that any of them are not great, but this one's actually a good one because, first of all, the length of your visa, your visa is a travel document. It allows you permission to enter the United States under your visa. They are granted for sometimes 1-year visas, 2-year visas, 5-year visas under the student category. It just depends on the country and the agreements that our government has with your government. And so if you have a 2-year visa, sometimes it can be, you'll have a 2-year visa that has an M on it, which means that it's multiple entry visa that you can go back and forth within those 2 years. Sometimes it's a single entry visa. So it's valid for 2 years, but it's a single entry visa. So as soon as you use it, it's no longer valid to re-enter. And we've seen that at times with Chinese students where they have a single entry visa. So the day you use it is the day it's done. You can't use that as an entry document. Now, there is a misconception with international students that they have to have a valid visa their whole time that they're here in the United States, and that is false. Okay, typically, when I have a student in my office, I point to the door and I say the visa is the key to that door. Once you enter the United States, this office is the United States as this analogy. Once you enter the United States, while you're here, as soon as you enter, they give you what's called an F1 visa status or a J1 visa status, which means that as long as you maintain your legal status in the United States by following the appropriate rules and regulations underneath your visa category, If you have an I-20 that allows you to study for 4 years or 5 years, you can remain in the United States that whole time without having to renew your visa. Every year I get students that come into my office and say, Greg, I'm heading home to renew my visa. And my question is always, are you heading home to see family and eat good food? And while you're there, you're going to renew your visa? Or is your sole purpose only to go to renew your visa? Because if your only purpose is to go to renew your visa, don't waste your money. Okay, stay in the United States. You're still legally here. The next time you go home, then apply to renew your visa. And students go, well, will I have a greater chance of denial if I don't renew it right away? And the answer is no. They knew that you were going to study in the United States for 5 years. So yes, you'll have to go back and apply for a new visa so you can get a new key to that door so you can re-enter the United States. But I've never seen in my 25 years of working with international students, a student who is denied a visa that's in the middle of their program when there was no cause to deny the visa renewal. I have seen it when a student is engaged in marijuana usage or has a DUI, that kind of thing. But if they've not gotten into any legal trouble here and they've just been pursuing their studies, I've never once in all of my years working with thousands of students not seen a student get their visa renewed. So it is not necessary to renew your visa every month or every year. And you can only renew your visa outside of the country. You cannot renew a visa here in the United States. We can extend your I-20. We can do some things to lengthen your stay here from an immigration standpoint. From a university standpoint, we can help you with that. But if you want to apply to renew your visa, you have to leave the country and renew it outside of the country. So long answer, but that was a good, super question from that standpoint. Have I been admitted to exploratory studies? Is that a red flag? No, it's not. Exploratory studies, you can be admitted to exploratory studies. If a consulate officer asks you, so what is this major? You can say, well, this is a major that allows me to take some classes within a couple of different majors so I can decide which one that I want to actually attend or pursue. And so this is common. We do have students that have exploratory studies listed on their major, and it's completely fine. So that's not a red flag. We have a student that says, if refused a visa, can the school do anything to revoke the refusal? Yes, there is nothing. This is a good question. There is nothing that Colorado State University or any other university that can do to change that decision on behalf of the U.S. government. Sometimes students ask us to send a letter of encouragement, that kind of thing. We won't do it because we've told by former consulate officers the visa appointment is between the student and the U.S. government, not between the school, the student, the university, and the U.S. government. They won't even answer our questions. There's nothing we can do to actually change a visa decision at a U.S. consulate officer. So it's a good question. Nothing we can do. Going on English program to us, how many chances will it be to get the visa? I'm not sure what this question is asking, but if you're denied a visa, I believe they allow you to reapply typically twice within a 6-month period. And then if you're denied twice, then I believe that they will request that you wait for another 6 months before you apply for another visa. But as far as number of chances, I don't know if there is a set number of chances. But again, as I mentioned before, the more you're denied, the less likely of them approving a visa will occur. So we've got a student that says, thanks for the space, please. I have been denied 4 times with community college. However, I'm going to CSU. What are the chances at 5 attempts? That's a great question. I don't know. It'll all depend on what's in your record in terms of former notes, all of that kind of stuff. You changed and now you're coming to CSU. Do you have scholarships that are available? Are you coming as an undergraduate student? Maybe coming to a university might impact them, but it's their decision. But it's hard to answer that question. I don't have a great answer to that. Just again, be calm, be genuine. One thing I tell students is this: if in the U.S. Smiling is a good thing. Okay. In some cultures, smiling can be perceived as differently, but at a U.S. consulate officer, a smile is going to be perceived as someone who's genuine. Typically, when we see someone smiling at us in U.S. culture, it's kind of disarming. It makes us feel comfortable. It makes it seem like that person's extremely friendly. If you have a wonderful smile, use it. Okay. That cannot hurt. So when you approach the embassy, take a deep breath and smile, right? And that's going to set the tone for the visa consulate officer, because so many people that they see come up, they're nervous, they're fidgeting, they're looking all over the place, and they're just nervous. Whereas if you're calm, you're confident, not overconfident, you're respectful, and you're smiling and that kind of thing, that's going to be a welcoming sight for a visa consulate officer. So, but after 5 attempts, I'm not sure. I don't have a response to that. No advice. Just do your best. If I've received financial aid from an organization, for example, College Board, CSSS, and you cannot afford the education without it, should you mention that? And how would that affect the visa acceptability? Thank you. So if you're being sponsored or you have financial aid from an outside organization, that's completely fine. There is no issue with that. Feel free to, and I apologize, I've got a cough for a second here. Excuse me. I was looking for the mute button, but I can't find it. If you're getting financial aid from another organization, that's completely fine. You can mention it. I don't think you would mention that you can't afford the education without it. Just mention that you're receiving financial aid from this other organization as well, which is helping you to afford the education. That's not a bad thing. We have sponsors, students from all over the world, from Uzbekistan, from wherever, that are getting sponsorship from their governments, from outside organizations, sponsor organizations. The U.S. consulate officer, they just want to know that you can afford your education. And so that's completely fine if it's another entity or organization is helping you do that. You've got Jitendra that says, I'm from Nepal. I've applied 6 years ago for undergraduate course, but my visa was denied. Completed my undergrad from India with honor degree and new applied for MS program at CSU. Does that reaction will impact now? They'll be able to see that you were denied in the system. But it's a new level. You've successfully completed a bachelor's degree in India. And so so just go in with confidence, and that will not necessarily mean that you're going to be denied the second time. So just, again, do your best and go in, and you've got a reason, a confident reason for coming here. You've been admitted to CSU. I can't tell you, that's going to, one thing this presentation can do is never give you a guarantee that you're going to receive a visa. We can kind of prepare you. This goal is to really prepare you the best that you can, to be calm, to kind of understand what may or may not happen, and timing of it, and really just put your best foot forward. We've had many, many students that have been thankful for this presentation because it gave them some insight just on how to kind of present themselves as they engage the consulate officer. Yeah, not a great answer, but I don't necessarily think that will have a negative impact being denied 6 years ago, but it could impact you. I just don't know. It depends on the visa consulate officer. Anonymous attendee, what if I speak well and I'm enrolled as an intensive programs language student? Should I stutter while being interviewed or speak fluently? No, basically, I think be genuine. Okay. There are people that are coming to our PLACE program that are extremely well spoken, but they're struggling on the academic writing side of things. Conversely, when you take the TOEFL test, there's different parts of the test. There's a speaking test, there's a listening test, and then there's a written test. And sometimes people do really well on the speaking and listening and do not so well on the written portion and the grammar portion. Sometimes it's the reverse. We have some cultures out there that do really well on the written side, but struggle with the speaking and understanding. So it's completely fine. You're not deceiving the consulate officer. Speak like you would normally speak. And if they ask, well, you're speaking really well, why are you going to an intensive language program? Well, it's been determined that while I speak pretty well, I need more guidance and instruction within the writing aspect to be academically prepared. So that's why I'm going. And that's a sufficient answer. That's completely fine. If you're faking, stuttering, and that kind of thing, I'm going to suggest that you're being disingenuous, and as a result, that can be perceived poorly. And so, it's a good question, but just be genuine, be who you are. Tahiru says, please, how long does it take CSU to issue the I-20? So from the time that you're admitted to the time that we issue the I-20, we're hoping that it's typically within 24 to 48 hours from the time that we receive your financial documentation. So you could be admitted, but if we're needing financial documentation from you, as soon as we get that financial documentation, then usually within 24 to 48 hours, business days. So for example, if we got your financial documentation at the end of the day on a Friday, got the weekend where the office is closed for 2 days, and then maybe 2 days later, hopefully you'll receive an email that has your I-20 attached to it within about 24 to 48 hours. But they also say, well, we can take up to 5 business days. So they try to be as expedient as possible on creating the I-20s. As soon as we have your financial documentation, then we can start that process. And they do a pretty good job of creating those documents in a timely fashion. It's going to an English program, 2S for 5-year visa. Can you tell the officer after the program I will get to the bachelor's degree? So, so the answer is you can tell the officer. So if you're going for a ESL program, typically we're going to issue an ESL program I-20 that's for the length of that program. Maybe it's a year, maybe it's a semester, depending on your skill set and what you need or what's been determined. There's nothing wrong with saying after I complete the ESL program, I have been admitted to CSU academically, and so I intend to then enter their bachelor's program after getting the appropriate I-20 or doing a change of level. That's completely fine. There's no issues with telling them that you intend to pursue a 4-year bachelor's degree after you complete the ESL program. That's completely fine. But for this purpose, you're going just for English language study, and then at the end of that program, you'll make the decision on whether you're going to pursue a bachelor's degree. So, what should I do if my visa appointment date is late because of availability? For example, my classes start in January, but got an appointment date on May, which would be too late. And that would be too late. If you're the only, so what you need to do up until January is keep checking their website and keep checking to see if there's any other options or appointments that open up. I would do that on a daily basis to see whether or not you maybe can slide in before January. But if the only appointment you can get is in May, then you're going to need to defer your admission to the fall semester and get a new I-20 that will allow you to actually begin your studies in August of 2024, because there's no way they're going to issue you a visa in May for a January start date. It will not happen. So if that's the case and you can't get an updated or a more timely appointment, then you need to contact our admission office, defer your admission, and get a new I-20 for the fall semester and keep that May date. The I-20 number will not change. Your CVIS record will be the same. We will just update that I-20 so it has a new program start date on it for a later date. How long does it take to receive the visa after the interview? Not long. It depends. If there's administrative processing, like I mentioned, that could take a month or 2 months, sometimes 6 months for a student to get their visa if their visa is in administrative processing. But if they've issued you or granted you the visa, they tell you your visa has been approved. Typically, it's within about 2 weeks that you'll receive your passport back with the visa stamp in it. So typically 2 to 3 weeks is usually the case, sometimes even more quickly if they know that your program start date is coming up fast. So Can I apply for a term change a second time? The answer is yes. You can always let us know that you want to defer again. They may charge you a new admission application fee and have you complete another application if it's past a year since you first applied, but you can always defer your admission and keep applying for a term change. There's no problems with that. We can update your I-20s on that. Going to an English program for us in 5 years. Will the officer ask many questions, and how many chances the visa will be approved? So again, they might ask several questions. They typically, if they know it's an ESL student, they tend to ask a little bit more basic questions. But as far as chances, how many chances the visa will be approved? What are my chances that the visa approved? I'm kind of interpreting this statement here. It all depends. It's so subjective. It all depends on the consulate officer. So I can't give you a percentage or, whether, will it be 60-40? Will it be 90-10? I have no idea what the percentages are on denial versus approval. It just depends on that visa consulate officer. And now it says, can I keep my initial port of entry to my family friends location, Seattle, as I will be coming 20 days before the classes start, and then we'll be planning to come to Denver. So this is a great question because this kind of implies this can be a red flag at the border because if your final end date is, or your final end destination is not Denver in terms of your flight, there are times where they actually will say, well, I don't understand. Why does your plane ticket end here in Seattle when you're going to school in Colorado? Or why does it end in Washington? Now you could explain to them, well, I have family here, and then I'm going to be driving down to Denver, or I'm going to be flying to Denver later. If your goal is to fly to Denver, then make sure that you have a ticket that is, you fly in, your entry is into Seattle, Washington, that's fine. And then 20 days later, you have another flight that shows that you're flying into Denver International Airport. Then it shows your final destination, regardless of if you're staying there for 20 days, that's completely fine. But a lot of times the Customs and Border Patrol, they want to see that your end destination is close to the school that you have been admitted to. So keep that in mind. I'm from Ghana, and there are no near dates in Ghana for spring. Can the school send a letter for an emergency date? We cannot. So there's nothing we can do to encourage a emergency date, an expedited date. You will want to reach out to the U.S. Embassy in Ghana and continue to just see if there's any positions that open up. Ask them. They might have on the website an expedited process because of your spring semester start date. Follow what they request from that standpoint, but there's nothing the university will do to send a letter for an emergency date. It won't help. We've been told by consulate officers because I mean, consider that everyone from Ghana, every student from Ghana is experiencing the same thing. That's just going to flood the embassy with letters from schools all over the United States asking for an emergency date and just slow up the process because they have all of these emergency letters flowing in. So they say, don't send them. So no, there's nothing we can do there. Can we dress formal like three-piece suit and with a tie and get a professor from get a nice haircut will impact on the visa officer? It never hurts to look your best. So wear what you would wear. I mean, don't wear a t-shirt with holes in it and jeans or pants with holes in it and frayed bottoms, that kind of thing. Just be presentable. Three-piece suit if you want to. It's not required, but look presentable. I'm not wearing a suit today, but I would go to the embassy in this and feel comfortable with that. But I don't think you need to have a formal suit. Nice haircut wouldn't be bad. I envy those who can get a nice haircut. So that will it have an impact on the officer? Depends on the day. Maybe not. Hard to say. But look your best. Do what you can there. So my family will be sponsoring me in addition. Can I mention a professor from Germany who wants to sponsor me? Yes, feel free to. bring financial documentation from that sponsor in Germany, and a letter indicating that they're willing to sponsor. If they have any questions financial, provide further sponsoring information that shows that you have additional funds. That's completely fine. If there's an academic gap in your resume after high school and now you're applying for undergrad, what would that affect anything? They might have questions. What have you been doing in the meantime to either keep up your studies or what have you? Have you attended any classes in your home country? Have you been working? That kind of thing. They might have some questions, but I don't know if that's going to positively or negatively impact your ability to get a visa. Again, just do your best, submit the application, and see what they say. I was given a work study award. Can I use that as financial support? I would say earning money, if you were given like a graduate assistantship that's covering your tuition and fees and that sort of thing, that's a pretty standard way of proving that you have the ability to cover your expenses. A work study award doesn't guarantee you a job on the university. So no, I would not use that as documentation for financial support. Plus you're only, especially at the undergraduate level, undergrad and grad level, you're limited to 20 hours per week. So the graduate assistantships that you get at an institution or a university in the United States, a lot of times covers all of your expenses plus a living stipend. A work study award at an undergraduate level provides you with the ability to work 20 hours per week at a minimum wage job. And so that is not a sufficient way to show financial support. I don't even think you need to mention it from that standpoint. Hello, please, is it bad to have a friend as a sponsor in the state, Native American? No, it's fine. You can have a friend in the United States that's going to be your sponsor. We see that all the time, and that's completely fine. If your funding is coming from someone here in the United States, there's no issues with that. Take the IELTS and overcome the requirements of IEP. Can I study my intended major before classes start? And if I plan to do so, should I announce that to my visa interview? Now, if you've been given IEP admission, you don't want to indicate to them that you're doing anything other than studying English as a second language. Now, if you get here and we are able to assess your English and see that you have the appropriate score, once you're here in the United States, we can quickly do a change of level and you can start to attend at the bachelor's level or the master's level, whichever you've been admitted for. That's completely fine. But your I-20 says you've been admitted for an ESL program. If you say, well, I got an IELTS score that's sufficient and I'm going to actually go for my intended major, they would say, well, why don't you have an updated I-20 then? So if that's your intent, contact us quickly. We'll do a quick update or edit to your I-20, send that out to you so that it reads appropriately from a bachelor's level I-20. Otherwise, if it's too late to do that, just continue to go through the visa application and come through the Customs and Border Patrol with the mindset that you're attending our PLACE ESL program. And then once you get here, they make a determination that your IELTS scores are sufficient. Then we can quickly do a change of level and you can start to attend. But I would not give a consulate officer any reason to deny you because you're saying something that's different. That's what's in front of them on paper. Okay. How can we dress for the visa interview? Just look your best. I think I answered that question before. If I have a tourist visa, will that help me? It won't hurt you. It won't help you. Tourist visa is just a short 6-month visa that gives you permission to be in the United States up to 6 months at a time. It might be a 10-year visa that allows you to come for 6 months at a time. But being approved for a visa in the past is not going to necessarily be a guarantee that will allow you to get a F1 student visa. F1 and J1 student visa, they're non-immigrant visas. And so you have to prove your intent that you are not intending to immigrate. So some of those questions, what are you going to do after you graduate? Well, the basic answer to that is I may get some work experience as allowed by my visa category of working for a year in the United States, but my intent, your intent always should be at this point, as you talk with the visa embassy officer, is that you're returning home to make an impact in your country. Once you get here and you get your visa or you get your degree and you work for a year, or maybe you're in a STEM field where you can work up to 3 years, and then maybe you're sponsored for an H-1B. At that point, maybe your plans or your intentions change, but at this point, your intention should always be that you're returning home. And so it's not necessarily going to help you to have a US visa. You have to, again, make sure that they understand that your intent is to come here as a student and to return home after that. How long does it take CSU to issue the I-20? I think I asked or answered that. I think, so go back and listen to the recording. I know that I answered that before. How long will it take for US to receive a decision on financial assistantship from CSU? So that's up to the department. If you're talking a graduate assistantship from like a graduate program at the master's level or the PhD program, that is going to depend on the department on how quickly they make those graduate assistantship offers. So I don't have a timeline on that. I would suggest that you reach out to your department if you're looking for a graduate assistantship to find out what the timeline is on those kind of decisions. But that will, if you're depending on that graduate assistantship as financial document to be able to get your I-20, that will cause a delay if they're actually taking more time to make a decision on who's getting the graduate assistantships in their department. So reach out to the department. They should be able to give you some guidance on that. So I'm sponsoring myself for education. I have necessary funds to cover my tuitions, living expenses, and other related costs. Okay. That's good. As long as you can provide documentation in your name that shows that you can cover your expenses while you're in the US for your education, that's fine. There's no red flags there. Some students have that ability and not all do, most don't. But if you're one of those fortunate few, that's great. And there should be no problems with that. As an IEP student to have a negative impact on my interview. I think I've mentioned that before, but no, an ESL student, IEP student, place student, that will not have any negative impact on your visa interview. Just be yourself, do your best as you speak as much as you possibly can and answer their questions. They know your plan is to study as an IEP student, so excuse me, they're going to give you a little bit of leeway from that standpoint and have an understanding of that you're coming to improve your language skills, so that's fine. I have opted for a hybrid program, January 2024 intake. I will be doing an online program for the first semester, second and third will be on campus. When will I get my I-20? When should I start my visa process? So, so your first semester, I'm assuming, is in the fall from your home country. And because you cannot take a fully online program in your first semester and be present in the United States, that is not possible. It's against F1 regulations. So if you're planning on Syria, if you're planning on being in the online program for the first semester back home, that's completely fine. And then I believe you will get your I-20. That's a good question. Probably within the first semester of your online program, at the latest, they will issue you an I-20. They might issue it right away even before your program starts, but will not let you enter the United States until the second semester when you can be fully on campus. As far as visa process, as soon as you get your I-20, you can start your visa process. I believe the embassy allows now up to 12 months in advance. It depends. Check on your local consulate officer, your embassy, to find out their timelines. But many times the Department of State will now allow students to apply within 12 months of their program start date. It used to be at all embassies 6 months, but that's changed recently. So check with your local embassy to find out what their timelines are. But for sure, within 6 months of you planning on arriving in the US, that's when you should start your visa process. Those are all the questions that are in the question answer. No, I take that back. A couple more have come in. Thank you so much. It's been a great webinar and get some help related to F1 interview. You are welcome. Happy to be here today presenting for you, Abdullah. And can I provide loan documents in place of financial documents? Loan documents are fine, Fadila. There's no problems with that. If you've been given a guaranteed loan, and you have documentation that that's how you're providing your financial, there is literally no problem with having loan documents. It's completely fine if you've been approved, and that's a way that you are going to afford your education. That's completely fine. All right. Well, I need a sip of coffee. That was quite the list of questions, and comprehensive and fantastic. I'm glad you all had these wonderful questions. This webinar goes for another 5 minutes, I believe, and then we are close to the end. But I want to just one, commend you and thank you for attending the workshop today. Hopefully you found it useful. It is my hope that we, not necessarily, again, like I mentioned before, this workshop doesn't guarantee you that you're going to get a visa, but it provides at least you some insight into what to anticipate so that you can be a little bit more calm as you engage your visa interview. You got a wonderful smile, use it. Okay. Be friendly, be personal, be genuine, be respectful, be confident. And go through those list of questions that we provided, start to think some of the responses that you would give. There's no right or wrong per se, but you know, there are being able to have a genuine conversation with a consulate officer is definitely going to help. So all right. Are there any final questions? We literally answered 38 questions during that question answer session. So I'm hoping that that was a comprehensive answers and responses. These pre-arrival webinars or workshops are just really, we provide these for you so that one, you can actually start to connect with us. You can see the smiling faces of who you're going to be engaged with when you arrive on campus. We have an upcoming webinar soon here that is Meet the ISSS staff and pre-arrival information. And so we will have our entire staff kind of introducing themselves. And the nice thing is the people that you see right now are going to be the people standing with you during orientation at the front desk and helping you out. And so we're not just people behind desks that don't care about our students. We absolutely are 100% passionate about what we do to make it just a fantastic experience for you when you get here. And so if you like what you see right now, you'll love it when you get here because it'll be more of the same as we help you be successful in your educational endeavors here at Colorado State University. So glad that we had this opportunity to bring this session to you. We will present this one more time to folks that haven't had a chance to hear this visa interview. Again, this visa workshop rather, and this workshop has been recorded and will be posted online if you want to go back and listen to it again. So with that, I've seen a few thank yous and whatnot, but I'm going to close out the workshop. Have a wonderful evening or afternoon or morning, depending on where you're at in the world. And we wish you well during your visa interview. So good luck. All right. Have a wonderful day.